Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Middleton Chamber's December Economic Development. I can't believe we're at the end of 2021 already. Very pleased that you guys could all join us. Thank you for making time out of your day for us. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors listed here on the screen. Without their support, it'd be incredibly hard for us to pull these programs off. So we certainly appreciate them sharing their resources with the Chamber through their sponsorship. So today we are going to get a City of Middleton economic development, kind of what we did, what we're doing, and what we're going to do. Look from Abby Attoun. She's the Director of Planning and Community Development over there. A couple of housekeeping things. I know we've all been on a million zillion Zooms at this point, but it's funny how sometimes we forget how it can work. So we would ask that you guys leave yourself on mute during part of this presentation. So that means you want that / the microphone on the bottom. Please feel free to turn your cameras on. It's always nice to see your beautiful smiling faces out there. And we are going to be monitoring chat throughout to take questions. So if something pops up and you want to know more, or you got a question or a follow-up, please feel free to put that in there. We'll also have some time at the end to kind of run through any additional questions. So I am recording today's session. We'll be sending it out after in a follow-up email. So if anyone on your team has missed today, please feel free to share this with them afterwards. So with that, I'd love to introduce Abby. As I said, she's been with the City of Middleton for 14 years and is the Director of Planning and Community Development. She focuses on a range of issues related to long-range planning and economic development. So Abby, it's my pleasure to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kristen, and thanks everyone for joining this economic development update today. As Kristen mentioned, we've all been on a million zillion Zooms, but it seems that with every new Zoom, there is another technical issue. And I thought I had everything worked out by now, but unfortunately, I cannot see any of your faces right now. So if you speak up to me, just let me know your name so that I can figure out who I'm speaking with. And I apologize that I'm not able to view anyone here as I present this PowerPoint update. So let's just see here. All right, so I'm going to go over a number of projects that the city is working on, and then I'll also provide some updates on some private development projects. I have categorized these projects as projects that are completed with the green check, projects that are underway or under construction, and then I've also included a few sneak peeks in here for you all. So 2021 was a surprisingly busy year for us. The city has completed a number of projects. One of the biggest ones for my department, at least, is the comprehensive plan. And as a city planner, this is kind of the penultimate plan that planner works on. It's a 20-year vision for the future. It was approved by the City Council in early March. And if you want to read more about the comprehensive plan, you can check out that URL. And I know Kristen is going to send the slides around afterwards, so you'll have that link available to you. The comprehensive plan outlines 7 community values that our city embraces. And these were values that were determined through a pretty extensive public engagement process with residents in our community. And they landed on the values of community, sustainability, equity, health, accessibility, innovation, and resiliency. And so as our staff was working on actually drafting the comprehensive plan throughout the pandemic, mostly while we were working from home, we tried to weave all of those values throughout the entire document. And I think, we've done a pretty good job of incorporating the values of our community throughout every aspect of that plan. One of the things that makes Middleton really quite unique for an urban ring community is that we export jobs to the region. And so this is contained within the economic development section. This is just one example of the data that you can find if you go and take a look at the plan. We have about 19,000 people that are coming into Middleton to work each day, and about 8,600 people who are leaving Middleton to work in other places, and only about 2,000 people who both live and work in Middleton. So shout out to you all who, like me, both live and work in our great community. But this just kind of goes to show how much of a job center our city has become. So there's still, kind of a perception of Middleton as a bedroom community, and it's really quite the opposite. Jobs have grown really rapidly. And we actually, after the city of Verona, we have the second highest jobs to housing ratio. So we have many more jobs than we have housing. It's 2.01. And obviously with Epic Systems and Verona, their ratio is higher. And then with Madison being the third highest. We've also included population and household projections. There are job projections. There's a lot of good data contained in the comprehensive plan. I'm just going to quick look at the chat. It looks like right now we don't have any questions. I'll just try to keep monitoring that throughout this presentation in case there are any questions on any of the slides. Also contained within the economic development section, we've identified several opportunity areas. These are areas where we really want to focus jobs and also housing in order to align with the location where we plan for people to work. You will notice one thing that's really stands out here about this map, and that is that almost all of the opportunities that we have are within the current core area of the city. And one of the issues that's facing the city is that we really don't have a whole lot of growth area that remains. We have negotiated growth agreements with the town of Springfield to the north, and that is the primary growth area that the city has is north of our current core of our city and east of Highway 12. So that's really the focus, and we're landlocked, or we have negotiated agreements that basically says that the city will not grow into those other areas. So we are really having to focus heavily on infill development and redevelopment. That comes with a whole lot of challenges, not the least of which is, neighborhood concerns about areas in the city that are changing. And there are also issues related to extraordinary costs to develop and redevelop properties. You have demolition, you have the potential for environmental remediation needs. So there are complicating factors with redevelopment and infill development that really don't exist when you're looking at a greenfield site, a farm field site north of the city. This year, the city amended TIF District 5, and TIF 5 is the TIF district that we have that has the longest remaining life. It goes through 2036, and the goal of the TIF 5 amendment was really to subtract out properties that we do not anticipate are going to redevelop over the life of the TIF. Primarily, these are the yellow areas, which is mostly the Spring Tree Apartments complex. That property has over $10 million in assessed property valuation, and those apartments are nearly full. So they're highly unlikely to redevelop over the life of the TIF. And because we were doing a subtraction of property valuation, that enabled the city to also look at adding in some additional properties and some focus areas. And because the city is so far over the state's assessed valuation limit of 12%, we can't create a new TIF district, and we cannot add any properties to the TIF district unless we're subtracting properties at the same time. So the areas that we focused on with the additions were the area that's known as the Bell Farm development. This is northwest of Graber Pond. And then we added these two properties in primarily for stormwater management purposes. The city is really trying to identify any opportunities that we have available to not only encourage enhanced stormwater management practices, but also potentially to acquire land where we can store and hold water before it enters our watershed. And that's obviously prompted by the 2018 flooding event, and really wanting to build in resiliency where we can to hold stormwater. We are also looking at adding in these properties, which are, I hope you can see my cursor as I'm moving it here. They're west of the Beltline on kind of the east side of the Airport Road Business Park. These properties are within TIF District 3 currently, but they've been in TIF District 3 since the district was created, and they have not developed over that period of time. And so we're basically including them in TIF 5 to give them a little bit of extra time to catch up with the development that's happened in other parts of the business park. We also are extending the TIF district to include properties on the east side of Allen Boulevard. These are mostly city-owned properties, and the reason that we're using these is to snake down to get around to properties that are located on University Avenue around Branch Street. University Avenue is really a focus area of the city, and so we eventually would like to extend a TIF district along the entirety of University Avenue, but because we're limited, we thought that this would at least get the process started so that we can begin to see some reinvestment along University Avenue. Right now we have 13 vacancies on the corridor, and so that's really something that we're looking carefully at. We're also working on a University Avenue corridor plan for that area, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Another great project that the city collaborated with the Middleton Area Development Corporation, really taking the lead, was to offer a loan program that would help businesses that were struggling due to the pandemic. So MADC kind of took the lead, as I mentioned, on setting up the program, but it was funded with a 50-50 contribution from the city and the Middleton Area Development Corporation. Loans ranged from $5,000 to $25,000. And I believe that all of the funds are spoken for as of today. I know that there was one last loan that was being finalized. So this enabled MADC and the city to help over 25 businesses to kind of weather the pandemic. So I'll also mention a few projects that are coming up in 2022. One of those is the city's official map update. After the city adopts a comprehensive plan, the best practice is to get an official map updated and approved, along with revising several ordinances. So the comprehensive plan was kind of the first step that will then require a domino effect to get all of our ordinances and mapping up to date to align with the goals and strategies of the comprehensive plan. So with this official map update, the major changes are really looking at rerouting a future road corridor that the city has planned. It's called the Bellefontaine Boulevard, and right now it's only constructed through one neighborhood, Middleton Ridge. But we have this officially mapped, and this is basically intended to let property owners, developers, and any landowner basically know the city's intent that we plan for this to be a regional east and west corridor to serve the growth area in the north part of the city. And we had to reroute Bellefontaine Boulevard because the county purchased the Acre Farm, which is located just north of the Pheasant Branch Conservancy and is an extension of the Conservancy. And we obviously don't want a road corridor bifurcating Conservancy land if we can avoid it. And so we have come up with an alternative route for Bellefontaine Boulevard. We also are really looking hard at trying to officially map future park land areas. It's kind of difficult to know exactly where those will go when properties are brought into the city and platted and subdivided. But we're really experiencing a lot of pressure right now with the amount of housing that's getting developed in the city and making sure that we're still meeting our city's policy goals for how we're serving our residents with parkland. And so we are taking a look at all opportunities to acquire additional parkland in the city to make sure that we're meeting those policy goals that are really kind of a key component of our city's philosophy, which is that we're providing a substantial amount of green space, and we want residents, if they want to go visit a park, we don't want to only give them one choice within walking distance. We really want to create an environment where people have a variety of options to recreate and enjoy Conservancy land. So we're looking at mapping some additional parkland outside the city, and we're also we're trying to also come up with creative locations for parks within the city as well. We are also in the process of overhauling our zoning ordinance, which is older than I am. It's very outdated. And so we're really trying to bring it light years ahead of where it exists right now, and really decrease the number of properties that are having to request a rezoning to planned development district, or PDD. The reason that we see so many PDDs in our city is because our ordinances are outdated for, what we actually are seeing get developed. And so we have that process underway right now. We're working with some consultants from Vanderwall and Associates. We have many goals that we pulled from the comprehensive plan for the zoning code rewrite, including that we want to encourage a greater diversity and mixture of land uses. We want to create and standardize ordinances related to short-term rentals, which we're starting to see more of, accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and then also missing middle housing. So if you want to learn more, become involved with the city's zoning ordinance update, click on this link here when you get the PowerPoint, and let us know your thoughts. And Van is excited about the ADUs. All right. The city is also working on a strategic plan, and this is the first time that the city has undertaken a strategic planning process. I know they're very common in the private sector, but they're kind of more cutting edge for communities to develop. And we thought that this is a wonderful time to undertake a strategic planning process, because we are going to be, our city administrator, who's been with the city for a couple decades plus, is going to be retiring in May. And we wanted to kind of set the stage to really identify short and long-term goals for the city, provide strategies to accomplish those goals, and monitor and evaluate progress. So we have brought on a consulting team from a few different firms that are helping us. The strategic plan is going to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, sustainability, renewable energy, public transportations, the city's staffing needs, facility needs, and also the city's organizational structure. And if you want to learn more about that, you can visit the city website. You can also go and review the recording from the city council meeting last night, where we had a progress update to our common council. And then I mentioned briefly that we're working on a plan for the University Avenue corridor, and we have brought together some stakeholders, property owners and business owners along the corridor to help us out with that. Daphne Shu, who is our associate planner, is leading the efforts, and we are hoping to create a plan that will allow a cohesive design as properties redevelop. So we're already seeing activity on University Avenue. The city's approved an apartment building located on the old Micosina site and the Melio's site. We also have an auto parts store that's being constructed right now as we speak on the Sonic site. And then the Jiffy Lube property is becoming a new dentist office. So we're already starting to see that transition. And it's really important that we have a plan so that, we can see along the corridor, we can start to see a cohesive pattern in terms of the building massing, the setbacks, streetscaping, bus shelter amenities, and other items like that. And the University Avenue corridor may end up being the future hub for bus rapid transit in Middleton, although we've been having some more recent conversations with Madison Metro about their route redesign plans, and University Avenue, we had kind of planned for that to be a focus of the route redesign, and we're learning that Madison Metro has some different ideas, and we're going to be working with them over the next 6 months or so to redesign the transit service system in Middleton for implementation beginning in 2023. And I'll show you kind of the thinking behind Madison Metro at this point. And I don't want it to seem like the city has made a decision about whether we agree with the direction that they're going, because we haven't really reviewed it at this point. This is very new. But what Madison is trying to do is basically, if you have a fictional town here, and all of these little dots are the locations of residents and jobs, and you can see they're really focused around these two corridors, and you have only 18 buses to serve this fictional town. Would you want to provide this town with a service that is focused around coverage, where some service is near everyone, but the service is infrequent, so it's unlikely to be useful for many people and trips? And you can see all the different routes here. Or would you want to focus your system around a ridership goal, which provides the highest possible frequency where many people live and work, but it's not available for everyone. It's not accessible to everyone. And Madison's Transportation Policy Board has recommended going with the ridership goal as kind of the leading policy initiative behind redesigning the transit system. I would say that the system that Middleton has in place right now is more of a coverage goal. So this could result in some substantial changes to our transit system here in Middleton, and kind of some of the goals that we've had over the years for developing the system. And just to provide a map of the alternative that they're looking at, looking at the Middleton portion, they would anticipate that there would be a peak route service that would head west on University, and then as you come into Middleton, you would take Allen Boulevard north until you get to Century Avenue, west on Century, south on Parmenter Street through the roundabout, and then west on University or Highway 14, south through Deming and through Greenway Station, and then going into Madison. So the benefit of what they're proposing is that, folks who live within easy access of Allen, Century, and Parmenter Street would have really high quality service, where almost so good that they wouldn't even have to check a bus schedule and figure out when the service is coming. They would just have a regular schedule and they would know. And what I like about that is that there are a lot of low-income housing tax credit developments that are focused around the Parmenter corridor. We also have a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing along Allen Boulevard, and those folks are more likely to really need transit for day-to-day transportation services. And so I like that they would be getting really good high-quality access to transportation. We also have a lot of concerns about the change. I guess the primary concern would be the area around the intersection of Century Avenue and Highway Q, because this is an area that has a lot of low-income housing and also has a very high ridership count right now. And to walk from the Arbor Lakes Apartments to the nearest bus stop is a 22-minute walk. So that we believe is really unacceptable. And that's something that I think we're going to have to really put our foot down here and say this has to change, and this is unacceptable. We also are concerned about the lack of service along the University Avenue corridor, given the amount of investment that we've seen, and also that the city has made in trying to really build up transit-oriented development along this corridor. And we're gravely concerned, and I think the chamber will likely have concerns as well, about not having any access to our primary employment base area. There are about 8,000 jobs that are north of University Avenue and west of the Beltline. And we've provided that data to Madison Metro to consider. And we've asked them to put together some other alternatives for us to consider. We're going to be having a Ped Bike Transit Committee meeting on December 16th. So if anyone's really interested in transit, or if you have coworkers or employees who rely on transit and you want to attend that meeting, just shoot me an email and I'll provide you the link so you can learn more about that. We are also working on getting a trailhead designed and constructed just east of the Stagecoach Trails apartment building, near the intersection of Century Avenue and Branch Street. This is land that the city acquired many years ago through a grant from the DNR for this purpose. And the goal would really be to provide parking to serve the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. And it's especially needed now that the property across the street, which used to be the Common Ground Cafe, is being redeveloped right now into apartments. And so it's not going to be an opportunity anymore for people to park there to visit the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. We also are going to be working with the county to reconstruct the Century Avenue Bridge. And if you've been paying really close attention to the local news, this bridge was ranked the 7th worst in the state for as far as the quality of the infrastructure based on the number of cars that this carries every day. So there are about 20,000 vehicles traveling along this segment of Century Avenue, and the bridge is in really bad shape and needs to be reconstructed. So we're taking the opportunity to also try to, as Van has already predicted, try to rebuild it so that we can also have a multi-use trail beneath the bridge. And that will require raising the height of the bridge somewhat. I think it's only a matter of a few feet, but that will provide enough clearance that we can have the trail beneath the bridge. And then that way we won't have, hundreds of people each day coming through the creek corridor system and then having to go up to grade at Century Avenue, take a right on that little narrow sidewalk, and then left and cross Century Avenue to get into the Conservancy trail system. So we also have received a grant through the DNR in the amount of $200,000 to help us get a portion of the trailhead constructed, and then also to put in this 10-foot wide pedestrian bridge, which we needed to get people from the trailhead and restroom building over into the main Conservancy loop. So right now, we have people who are running, training for a half marathon or a marathon and running 20 miles on these trails. And there really is not a public restroom aside from Orchid Heights, which is seasonal, that's available. So this is just a really good opportunity to provide a place for people to have a rest, go to the bathroom, get a drink of water. And also, for visitors who don't live close to the Conservancy, they can drive here and park and then use the trail system. And let's see. We also, the city continues to be a leader in addressing climate change and in our environmental sustainability initiatives. This is thanks to our city's sustainability coordinator, Kelly Hilliard, who is a go-getter and has really been successful at not only securing some really major grant funding for the city, but she's also received some national recognition for the city's efforts. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the things that she's working on because this could be like an hour-long presentation in and of itself with all that she's been able to accomplish. Kelly has received a grant to add battery storage at the police department. So MG&E partnered with the city a few years back to install a 100 kilowatt array at the police department. And we would like to take that a step further and really build in some resiliency efforts in order to make sure that that can continue to operate in case of a natural disaster or something that would affect the power supply. It is highly unlikely that we're going to experience an event like that because the grid system that we're part of is very reliable. But the reason that it's important in this location is because the city has an emergency operations center that's in the basement of the police department. And that is where all of the city operations are housed in case of an emergency. We did deploy this during the 2018 floods, and we also had to deploy it during the active shooter situation that happened a few years ago in the Discovery Springs area. So we want to make sure that that can continue to operate, and we have, backup supply. We are also on the list of LEED for City and Communities. We received this recognition in 2020. And I like to say that Middleton is small but mighty, because we're by far the smallest community that has gotten this designation. We're working with communities like Miami, Florida, major counties in California. And what LEED has decided to do for Middleton is basically to make us a test case for what a really small community can accomplish. And they've even extended an offer to really put some funding into any project that the city might want to pilot that would be a really cutting edge energy efficient design project that could potentially be replicated in other small cities. We also received a grant to study the feasibility of installing a microgrid that would serve the Airport Road Business Park businesses. This was brought forward by a Middleton resident who just had interest in a project like this, Bartlett Durand. And the city worked with Bartlett to put together a grant application. We had significant involvement with MG&E as well. They had a couple of engineers that worked on the project with us and helped us with the grant, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without their expertise. So we did receive funding. This is just for studying whether it's even feasible. It's not for anything implementation related, but we also want to see if there's a possibility to make the Airport Road Business Park more resilient to a major natural disaster event. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight the NOAA housing improvement project that Kelly is also spearheading for the city. This is trying to improve naturally occurring affordable housing. So housing that maybe was built in the 70s and doesn't have a subsidy attached to it, but is more affordable. This is primarily rental housing. And what we would like to do is to use some of the city's ARPA funding to assist people who are most negatively impacted by the pandemic, by helping to make energy efficiency improvements in their buildings to not only make them more comfortable, but also to reduce their energy bills, while also negotiating with their landlord to ensure that this additional investment that the city is making is not going to result in a rent increase to people who are living in this type of housing. So it checks a lot of goals for the city, because we really want to encourage energy efficiency. We want to make sure that everybody has comfortable and desirable place to live in the city. And then we also are really pushing towards our citywide energy goals to really reduce the amount of electricity and natural gas that we're using citywide. Let's see. I'm just looking at a question that came in, and I will talk about Bell Farm a bit, and I'll make sure that I answer your questions about Bell Farm. All right, so let's go on. The city is also working on a community campus plan. This planning project has really been put on hold because we haven't really been able to do a substantial amount of public engagement, which is really the next step in the process. But this is the plan for the city-owned land that's in downtown Middleton. Most of the land right now is parking lots, but we also have our city buildings like City Hall, which is aging, the public library, which is pretty cramped for space, and the senior center building, which there could be some improvements that would be made to make that building more functional as well. And then I just also wanted to mention my #1 favorite project in the city, which is the Stonehorse Green, the downtown gathering space. This is downtown Middleton's only green space, and the goal behind this is to really encourage people to gather, to get together, to listen to music, have a movie night, and host other events for the community. And I'm really excited to say that this project is now out for bid. It's the second time, so knock on wood, but the project's out for bid, and we expect to get bids back on December 16th so that we can move forward with constructing the green next year. And we've had the city has contributed about $1 million in tax increment financing dollars towards the project, but we've also had a really substantial private fundraising campaign that has been led by Kevin Mahaney, along with 3 other folks involved with the city, to really encourage businesses and residents to help the city make this project a reality. And primarily through Kevin's work, but also working with the rest of the committee, the city has been able to raise over $700,000 through naming rights and other sponsorships. And then another awesome project that we're working on is the Herdman Park development. This is on land that was donated by Dan Herdman west of the city. It's actually part of the city now. So on the west side of the city, it's been annexed now into the city, and north of the golf course. And the plan here is to develop a cross-country ski facility that eventually could be an Olympic training facility. And this project will be owned by the Central Cross Country Skiing Association. And the photograph on the right side was actually taken just this morning because they have started making snow out there as of this morning. So it's a really exciting project. I think this one kind of got away from me a bit, and our city administrator and me and a couple of other folks got a tour from our public lands director a couple of weeks ago, showing the progress that has been made out there and the trails that have already been constructed or that have already been cleared. And it's a really, really neat area and absolutely beautiful scenery. And it is public land. So I would encourage anyone who wants to check it out to actually just go drive out there, park and walk around. Not many people realize, I think, that it's available now, but you can go and check it out. And then I just wanted to go over some major issues that are facing the city right now. One is the lack of owner-occupied, affordable, and market rate housing options in the city. We don't really have a lot of land that's available, as I mentioned. The community of Bishop's Bay development is really the only area that's been platted and is ready for new housing. And it's stalled due to the need for some pretty substantial utility investments. And so we really don't have a whole lot of options right now for more owner-occupied housing. And I know with the amount of rental housing that's been developed, there's really a strong interest from our city council as well as our workforce housing committee in getting more owner-occupied housing options. Also, the lack of growth area that is tied in, but this affects not only housing, but it also affects businesses and economic development, because when we're approached by a company that wants to locate in Middleton, we don't have that many options to give them now. So we really are having to get creative in trying to parcel land together and really think outside the box in terms of infill development in order to really remain competitive with other communities. And then we also really want to preserve the limited land that we have available in the city for economic growth. And I think that that's going to continue to get harder and harder as properties remain, properties within the business park and other areas remain undeveloped. The city is going to start getting a lot of pressure to convert those to other types of uses. And I think it's really important that we preserve that limited land for employment growth. And then I also mentioned this earlier, providing public park space to accommodate infill development. We have a city policy that says we need 15 acres of parkland for every 1,000 people in the city. And when you have a new apartment building, for example, the Tresta development, that has 263 units. So that could result in 500 more people living in that housing right there. Well, that's 7.5 acres of parkland that we need to be able to satisfy the city's policy goal. And that whole development doesn't even take up 7.5 acres of land. So it just goes to show, like, that's going to become a lot more difficult when we're growing up to be able to serve those people with adequate parkland, as kind of we've set the standard here in Middleton to do. And then also under the state levy cap, the city is going to struggle to continue to offer high quality services to the community because we're really limited in the amount of, the amount of tax-based growth that we have available, which means we can't hire more staff. And we've really been limited for many years under that levy cap. And that's going to be hard for us because we're constantly getting requests to do this and do that and have these programs available, but it's really going to be challenging to do under the state levy cap. And then going on to the private development side. Kate had asked a question about the Bell Farm development. And this is really probably the most substantial development that's been approved since the community of Bishops Bay. This is 44 acres of land being developed by Kathleen Slattery Moshkow, north and west of Graber Pond. And this received the second zoning approval last night at the city council. And this development will include up to 880 units of housing, primarily multifamily. There are 730 multifamily units, but we'll also have 150 single family housing units. And there's some really cool different types of housing that are being proposed within this development. She's got a concept called the London Mew. I wasn't familiar with it, but once I saw an image of what a London Mew was, I understood. She's got lots of townhomes and condos and just a really, really neat range of options for people. And this is really, the city is trying to encourage what we call a complete neighborhood, where you don't only have, one type of housing. You don't just have single family on 15,000 square foot lots. You have a whole range of options, smaller lots, medium-sized lots, larger lots. You have the missing middle housing, which could be, a 16-unit apartment building like Cardinal Row on Lee Street in Middleton, and then you have some 4-story apartment buildings mixed in as well. You really have the whole gamut of options, and then you also have services that can serve this neighborhood and that can serve as gathering places and public amenities that people can walk to. They don't have to drive for every single trip that they make. And this is really, this development is really the prime example of, what we're really looking for in terms of a complete neighborhood. They're going to have retail and restaurant. They'll have mixed use buildings that have, commercial on the ground floor with apartments above. And then eventually they'd also like to have an office and hotel space available. And then another big mixed use development that sort of snuck up on us, even though it's been in our plans for a few decades, is the Bruce Company mixed use development. This one also has up to 880 units of housing, but this one is all multifamily housing. There aren't any single family options because this is an infill redevelopment site. And this entire development is on 14 acres of land. So it's pretty dense. This is, if you know where the Bruce Company is now, they are staying in Middleton. They're reinvesting in their facilities, and they would like to rebuild their facility as phase 1 of this development, with the goal of never having one day that they're not in operation. So they would rebuild their retail operation. They would also have some office above that, and then move into here, open up, and then they would demo the current building that they're in, which would enable them to build a new greenhouse, an open air pavilion, and then eventually this could be a bank use on the corner. And then that also frees up a lot of land behind that right now they're using to stage and store equipment related to their landscaping business. But they've decided that that land is really too valuable to just be storing equipment on at this point. And so they're going to be looking at partnering with T-Wall to build multifamily housing behind here, along with eventually a hotel and also another multifamily building. The city, at the same time, is looking at acquiring this property here that currently, we call it the Latitude Graphics property, but most people know it as Auto Color because that is one of the primary tenants that's within the building. And we would be purchasing this property, holding on to it for years, probably until until the density builds up around it, but eventually converting this into a park along the creek corridor. I'm just going to check the chat really quick. Oh, great question. So one of the questions that came in is, has there been any discussion about another major grocery store in the area? I think that, that's really going to be driven by the market. But there is at least one large grocery store that is interested in locating in Middleton. It's one that, has expanded into Madison, has a couple of locations. And I think that it would be very well received, because we get the question a lot from people, like, why can't we have a Trader Joe's or, a Hy-Vee or whatever it may be? And that's very much driven by the market. But what grocery stores look at is the number of housing units that are nearby. And so as the city grows up, especially focusing investment along those major transportation corridors that are well served by transit, and kind of redeveloping and building up along those major corridors, we are going to get to a point where it's going to be very desirable for another grocery store to operate here, because we've got enough people to support it, while still keeping, Pick and Save and Costco healthy as well. And then I just wanted to check also on the chat, there was a question about, let's see. So we went over Bell Farm development and the different housing types. There was also a question about whether the Deming and airport area will provide amenities. Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So the Airport Road Business Park, and whether there would be amenities like coffee shops and restaurants, etc. I know that is kind of a trend now, is trying to make sure that business park areas also have, walkable restaurants and coffee shops and those kinds of things, because, during the day when people are working, they want to have those within easy access to their jobs. I think that might be a little bit of a harder sell, just because I'm not sure if the density is there really to support those kinds of uses, and there aren't that many new restaurants opening right now. At least we haven't seen that in Middleton. I think it also could be a challenge in terms of like the city's goals to try to protect those lands for either business park uses, but also for services that are related directly to the business uses. So one of the retail type services that we have allowed within the business park is daycare facilities, because that's really desirable for people who work there to have that close by and be able, if you have a sick kid, you're 2 minutes away to be able to go pick them up from daycare. And so we have been open to allowing for a limited amount of land within the business park to be used for services that serve those business park tenants directly. I know that when you start getting into other retail uses, it's not as much of an issue from the businesses standpoint. The businesses are likely to support that. It actually becomes an issue in preserving the integrity of future business uses, because what we see happen is we have a coffee shop with some nice outdoor seating go in, and then you have a light manufacturing that wants to occupy right next door, and then it's those retail type uses that get concerned, and they say, well, I don't want that right next door to me. And we have to be like, well, that was actually the intended use for the business park. So it's really kind of protecting and making sure we can preserve that land for those types of uses. But I mean, I wouldn't say that it's absolutely a no. It's a possibility. And then another question that came in is regarding the collector road from M to Parmenter, Bellefontaine. Does the city intend to continue to encourage residential growth along what will be a high volume roadway? It seems incompatible. It should be one or the other. If it went ahead as originally planned, it would be like highway PD. Okay, so for the person who asked that question, it sounds like you're concerned about the road being expanded. And so I have very good news to report. And that is that the city had reached out to the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Capital Area Regional Plan Organization to develop some traffic modeling through 2050 to see if we really did need to 4-lane that road as we had initially intended through the Middleton Ridge neighborhood. And, you know, if you go into the Middleton Ridge neighborhood, it's very clear the city's intent was to make that a 4-lane road. We actually even put road closed signs up to the other 2 lanes where we had planned to expand. However, the traffic modeling data that we have now indicates that we do not need that to be a 4-lane corridor, and we will not through 2050. So our plan right now is not to extend that, not to require the additional 2 lanes to be built, and also not to require the Bell Farm development to dedicate that additional right-of-way for a 4-lane road, because we don't think it's needed. Another question came in. I would like to know more about mass transit in the business park related to my employees. And would be happy to share that with you. It sounds like you need to hop off, so I will give you a call on that. And then the entire road or just Bellefontaine. So the entirety of the Bellefontaine Boulevard would only be limited to a 2-lane. One thing that is kind of unknown at this point is through the Middleton Ridge neighborhood, we already have the land dedicated for 4 lanes. And you can even see there's storm sewer drains that have been installed there for the future 2 additional lanes that we had intended to construct. What we're thinking now is that might be a really cool opportunity for a regional bike path potentially, or some other type of recreation use, but it's really unknown at this point. We just got this traffic modeling data from the NPO just in the last week or so. And you can always reach out to me if you have additional questions. And then this is the building I mentioned, and I know I'm running out of time, so I better go quick here. But University Avenue, we do have a new project coming. This is at the old Micosina site. It's an absolutely beautiful building that is being developed by the same company that developed the property right across the street. So that's Threshold and Prime Urban Properties. And then also the Captain Bill's site is getting redeveloped into a 4-story building with 65 units. I think the rendering I have still shows 5 stories, but that's not what ended up getting approved by the city. So that'll be a 4-story building. And then Brett Newcomb is working on development just right across the street from the Marriott Hotel and Convention Center. Right now it's just a patch of land. It used to be a parking lot. And this will be 169 units of housing in 2 buildings. And that is all I have. Kristen is going to share the PowerPoint. So please feel free to reach out to me about any questions you have. I'm always here to help, and I appreciate the time today. So thank you.
Thank you, Abby. That was awesome. I'm going to plug a few things here in the slide for the chamber, and then we will open it up for questions. Would love to see you guys tomorrow in person at our business social hour taking place at the Holiday Inn and Hotel and Suites. I always say that wrong for some reason. So if you haven't registered for that, registration is open on the website. Again, that's tomorrow night. Something new we've done, we've added the holiday office closures to the calendar too. So if you need to stop in for gift certificates, make sure you check that to see when we're going to be around. And working super hard to get all of those 2022 events up on the calendar. Get Movie Middleton is there for January, and we've got a great business boost motivational talk at the end of the month in January as well. So shout out to the sponsors. Thank you guys all for being here. Especially appreciative to Abby for sharing all of this awesome, great information. And you guys can look for the recording from me coming out a little bit later. So I am going to stop recording.
And Kristen,